they do also say like with babies, because
Yeah.
what they would say is that since adults are so like so quick to cut things off, like you said earlier, we're like so quick to say, "Oh, well, that's not possible. This was the reason why that happened." Like the
Yeah.
very kids, like even kids and babies, their mind doesn't think too far into things as much as adults do. So what they see, like what they think is happening, is what they instantly believe is happening.
Yes. And that there's a lot of stuff written about that. Some make sense, some less. So, I mean, I still consider myself a reluctant believer in the paranormal. I mean, I at times I wish it. And here's what you probably heard me say or came across me saying: I wish that it didn't exist, just so that I could sound smart and by dismissing it all rationally, and with science. But it can't be done that way. I mean, I know that there are plenty of people that would argue against that, but what they're doing, well, if you take, some of the famous debunkers like James Randi, who would offer his $1 million challenge, and and you had people that followed him that were just so insistent, and they would call anybody that ghost hunts, oh, that's pseudoscience, that's pseudoscience. But then if you go back and like really analyze what they're saying, it doesn't make a lot of sense logically either, because doesn't all science kind of start as pseudoscience until it picks up steam and it's proven? So pseudoscience, they try to use it as an insult and a very patronizing term to dismiss whole swaths of beliefs and data that's collected. And it's an overgeneralization to begin with, so that's also a losing argument whenever anyone makes an overgeneralization. Um, so it's that, but then I've noticed that James Randi had used pseudoscience to refute pseudoscience, only he dresses his pseudoscience as science, but it's not. So when it comes to like really evaluating paranormal activity, yeah, there are parts of it that is 100% pseudoscience. I wish it weren't, but let's face facts here. It's paranormal because it's not normal. It's called paranormal. In order, if you want to follow the scientific principle of having things being repeated in a controlled setting at will, you're basically trying to force the paranormal to become normal in order for you to believe it. And then if you even follow the science circles, because I have a lot of friends that are scientists, and many of them believe in the paranormal, by the way. Um, and you get them talking about this proving by repetition in a scientific setting. They will argue that that's even a faulty way of testing things. There are many different ways that scientists um, try to test something, in fact. And maybe the repetition in a controlled setting is probably one of the most universally accepted. There are still people that argue that that doesn't work. And I actually believe that when it comes to trying to study things like the paranormal, that model does not work whatsoever. Therefore, we're not going to be able to prove it anything that way. So it's really interesting. I mean, I found a brilliant article by I think it was like a Harvard scientist that totally dismantles the proving by repetition argument. And it made perfectly logical sense. So I do think you just need to sometimes trust your own instincts. You have to do due diligence. Critical thinking skills are impeccable, and necessary. I think you need to do the due diligence, but sometimes when you get that feeling, like with you in the door, and I think you need to trust your instincts a little bit more that maybe something is not right and it's your subconscious that's flagging it. It's just that your conscience can't identify it at that moment.
And that also could go with my mind in general, because I've never seen anything. So my
Yeah.
mind would never truly straight go to that because in my like my formal mind, the way I believe is that that doesn't exist to like that part of my brain.
Hmm.
So why would it
Hmm.
instantly think that? And that
Right.
also follows something that I had read about once, how the reason why we think all that is so silly is because our minds were never meant to comprehend such a thing. Like how animals are. They may see it, but they don't know exactly what it is. And that's how we were supposed to be. And we have gained all this knowledge over time to where we were never supposed to know any of that kind of stuff. That was never supposed to be a natural thing for us to learn. So it's
Yeah.
so hard for our mind to comprehend it when it was never supposed to be a thing in the first place for us.
Well, it ties back to what you said about children being somewhat unfiltered. They're taught the programming that certain things don't exist, but children, they don't know this when they come out. So, yeah, I do think that there's a sensitivity that they have, that many of them have, that we lose over time through the programming that we get from society, from parents, from teachers, from peers, all of that stuff. And so when they're kind of unfiltered and new to the world, they don't know the rules. So, yeah, I do think the veil, as some people call it, between the known and the unknown is a little bit more accessible to them. It's just too bad they can't really communicate what they
Yeah.
see or hear. But, tons of stories of children, just babies, just laughing. And you could tell by the eyes and the pupil dilation, and the iris, that they are definitely looking at something that's just, not that much ahead of them, in front of them. And they're just laughing while they're pinpointing their attention at something that we can't see. And that has long mystified. It still mystifies psychologists and other scientific minded people that study human behavior and how the brain works. There's so much we don't know. We think we know, and science is continually changing.